Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, October 20th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. Well, today, as always, we have a great number of celebrations. To start us off, we're reminded that they celebrate the dedication of the Abbey of Our Lady in Pontny, 4 leagues from Auxerre in France. We're told that was founded in 1114 by Thubaud, Count of Champagne. So if you know what a league is and you know where Auxerre is, then you know exactly where that abbey is found. But otherwise, it's just brought to us from the Abbot Orsini. Likewise, we're told that the Marianist religious order celebrates the Immaculate Heart of Mary today. In Notre Dame, or rather in Lucerne in Vaud in Switzerland, they celebrate Notre Dame, Our Lady, because it was today, October 20th, in 1275, that Pope Gregory X dedicated Lucerne's cathedral. Right? So not only local believers, but also pilgrims from Germany, France, and Italy worshipped in the magnificent Gothic building. Right? We're also told that many brought thanks to Notre Dame de Lausanne for miracles of healing. Right? The dedication anniversary, we're told, was celebrated annually until 1536, when Protestant forces from a supposed ally in Bern took over the city, and an edict of October 19th suppressed all Catholic services. So it would have been the day before the anniversary celebrations. That's very sad. The cathedral then became a Reformed church, and cartloads of its treasures were taken to Bern, where in 1537 its silver altarpiece and gilded silver statue of the Virgin and Child were melted down to make coins. Right? The Reformed Church's Cathedral of Notre Dame remains a major tourist attraction. However, a new church of Notre Dame was consecrated in 1835 in the Valentine district. It was the first Catholic church in the city since the Reformation. On October 13th, 1946, a wooded polychrome Madonna was installed there. And this statue dates back to the 1400s, when it was hidden during the days of the Bernese occupation and kept by the nuns of the Catholic school in that town since 1848. Right? In 1992, Pope St. John Paul II gave the Valentine Church of Notre Dame the title of Minor Basilica. In Lima, Peru, they celebrate Nuestra Senhora del Aviso, Our Lady of the Warning. This is her feast day. If you go to Brazil, they celebrate Nossa Senhora de Nazaré in Paraguaybebas in Pará, Brazil. So what is the story of this one? Well, Portuguese devotion to Our Lady of Nazareth, mind you, Portuguese devotion, began with a black Madonna statuette, which is held to have been sculpted by Saint Joseph, painted by Saint Luke, and brought from Nazareth to Spain in the 400s by a monk named Ciriaco. Okay, so nice. So Saint Joseph and Saint Luke both worked on this statue. So we know that they are the ones who have worked on so many statues. The image goes that the story goes that the image resided there in a monastery until 711, when Moors conquered the area, and another monk, Rodrigo, fled with the last Visigothic king and the Black Madonna to the Portuguese coast, where they lived as hermits. They enshrined the statue in a grotto. In 1182, a local leader, Faus Roupinho, was hunting in the area when his horse lunged towards a sea cliff in the fog, but he stopped short when he invoked the Madonna of the grotto there. So then Dom Faus was so impressed he had a chapel built for the Madonna above the grotto, where workmen found a parchment detailing the statue's history. The current town in Portugal of Nazaré, if you're familiar with that, it's a beautiful coastal town, grew up around the shrine. Nossa Senhora de Nazaré became one of the most popular devotions in Portugal, where her feast on September 8th was celebrated with a great Cirio, in which participants carried a huge candle and made a processional statue over a miles-long route, right? Although the original statue depicted the Mary seated to nurse Jesus, the processional statue had her standing, right? And it's this version that traveled to Brazil with Portuguese settlers, right? In 1630, attracted by a mysterious light, a fisherman checking his nets found a statue of the Virgin and Child along the sea cliff along Saquarema on Brazil's southern coast. This became the site of Brazil's first shrine in Chirio to Our Lady of Nazareth. Its largest, however, is in Belém, in the state of Pará. Devotion there began in 1700 when a mestizo named Plácido found a statuette in a creek bed. So they're just finding all these statues. He set it on an altar in his home, but it repeatedly returned to the creek. And so he built a shrine there for it. When the provincial governor took the 11-inch image to the palace chapel, it returned to Plácido's shrine. So now there's a huge basilica there which hosts millions of pilgrims on this feast on the second Sunday in October. So very beautiful story of Nossa Senhora de Nazaré in Brazil, based on that Portuguese devotion. There's also a number of mentions today of the celebration of Mater Amabilis in Rome. Okay, so it's hard to get the entire story. There's one side that tells me that this is the celebration because the Pope visiting the convent pulled back a curtain hiding a novice's awkward fresco and found it transformed. That took place in 1846. The Pope was Pope Pius IX. And as you might have guessed, that visit to the monastery took place October 20th, 1846. Now, what's true about that story is that, yes, especially he visited the monastery. It's called Trinità dei Monti, which we're told that the Romans really loved it, and as did Pius IX. We're told that the fresco was painted in 1844 when a young French girl who was like a novice, Pauline Pedrao, expressed to the Mother Superior, Cariolis, that she wanted to paint Our Lady in a little niche in the hallway, right, which led to the cloister. So I'm not sure. The monastery itself dates from the 14th century, right? Francesco di Paola founded the monastery, known as Trinità dei Monti, right? It's in Piazza Spagna in Rome, right? In 1828, the monastery was abandoned, and Leo XII expressed the desire to have some religious sisters of the Sacred Heart come there. And that actually took place in 1828. Since then, everybody has associated this monastery with Mater Admirabilis, sorry. So again, we know that this sister, Pauline Pedro, painted the image. There was only one side that said that the image was an awkward fresco. In any event, when Pope Pius IX visited, he pulled back the curtain and he saw this image in the niche, and he exclaimed, Mater Admirabilis, right? Like the admirable mother. And since then, she's been attributed to it, right? That's the name that they've always called it. In fact, Pope Pius IX celebrated the Eucharist right in front of this miraculous image, I guess, in the hallway. So yeah, it's a little unclear. Apparently, poor Pauline Pedro was not a good artist, but in any event, it's given rise to great devotion of the Romans, and it's still celebrated to today because this is the day when Pope Pius IX visited it. And so that's what we're celebrating today in the Marian world on October 20th. For today's reading from True Devotion to Mary by St. Louis de Montfort, we will continue with part 2, entitled On the Most Excellent Devotion to Our Blessed Lady, or the Perfect Consecration to Jesus by Mary, or by means of Mary. Again, we just finished yesterday the preliminary observations on the different ways of honoring our Blessed Lady, and today we will start part 1, entitled In What Consists the Perfect Consecration to Jesus by Mary, like by means of Mary. And so we'll start with point 120. All our perfection consists in being conformed, united, and consecrated to Jesus Christ. And therefore the most perfect of all devotions is, without any doubt, that which the most perfectly conforms, unites, and consecrates us to Jesus Christ. Now Mary, being the most conformed of all creatures to Jesus Christ, it follows that, of all devotions, that which most consecrates and conforms the soul to our Lord is devotion to His Holy Mother, and that the more a soul is consecrated to Mary, the more it is consecrated to Jesus. Hence it comes to pass that the most perfect consecration to Jesus Christ is nothing else but a perfect and entire consecration of ourselves to the Blessed Virgin, and this is the devotion which I teach, or in other words, a perfect renewal of the vows and promises of holy baptism. And now we'll consider point 121. This devotion consists, then,
and giving ourselves entirely and altogether to Our Lady, in order to belong entirely and altogether to Jesus by her. We must give her, first, our body, with all its senses and its members. 2, our soul with all its powers. 3, the external goods of fortune, whether present or to come. And 4th, our spiritual and interior goods, which are our merits and our virtues, and our good works, past, present, and future. In a word, we must give her all that we have in the order of nature and in the order of grace, and all that may become ours in the future in the orders of nature, grace, and glory. And this we must do without any reserve of so much as 1 farthing, 1 hair, or 1 least good action. And we must do it also for all eternity, and we must do it further without pretending to or hoping for any other recompense for our offering and service, except the honor of belonging to Jesus Christ through Mary and in Mary, even though that sweet mistress were not, as she always is, the most generous and the most grateful of creatures. So you're saying it's a hypothetical, like even if she weren't the most gracious and grateful of creatures, yeah, even then we would still serve her just because she's Jesus' mother.
Hello, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to our Marian podcast. In the spirit of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, we say to you that there is no greater delight than to spread the devotion of Our Lady. We hope you share these sentiments and encourage you greatly to share with a loved one. Know that you are always in our prayers, and we ask that you keep us in yours. God bless.